Hi everybody, very good morning. Before we start Angular or anything, we just take a stack of what we have learned, what we covered as on date, and any questions you can let me know, because next week onwards we are moving on to Angular, which is real programming language where we'll be touching upon HTML that we have learned on week 1. We'll be touching upon JavaScript programs that we touched on week 2, as well as some other important features of the Angular. So very important, very, if you aren't a developer, these concepts are very important. So this next week it starts. That will continue till almost like 8 weeks. Another 4 to 5 weeks it goes on, right? So we just go with what we covered. I'll just share my screen now. Just confirm once you are able to see my screen, and I hope my voice is audible to you all. Please confirm if you are able to see the screen and my voice is audible. Thank you. I'll now come back to PowerPoint. So now I'm showing the PowerPoint. Let us take a stock of what we have learned on week 1, week 2, and then before we move on to what are all the prerequisites required for Angular, I'll let you know so that you can keep it ready, your system, so that we can start Angular from Monday onwards. So what we have overall seen is week 1 HTML, the general logics, CSS, and JavaScript basics. JavaScript basics we started from week 2. So these are all the 3 components. All that 3 we have seen. Week 2 JS program elements, JIT we have not touched. Anyway, we will touch that as we go. Data structures, arrays, strings, all that we have seen. Date processing, yes, we have seen. All this we have seen it from week 4 Node.js basics. That Node.js basics also we have taken it under week 2, because those are all required for our week 3 starting point. So we need that. So we have taken week 4 Node.js basics. We have taken it under week 2 itself. So JIT, we are moving that out. JIT, we are taking it under week 3. So JIT is, I hope you are all using JIT now for all your documents, seeing the documents, class notes. Already you are all seeing the JIT. So that should not be a problem. But anyway, from the program perspective, what needs to be done, we'll see from week 3 onwards. Initially, we may not touch it, but as we go, we'll touch that day to day, we'll touch that. Okay, so once we touched upon in HTML, what we have learned, this HTML is hypertext markup language. And please remember, tomorrow you have a MCQ starting at 11, right, Rajesh? Starting from 11 to 1, I think. Timing, please check up with the team. I think it is starting at 11 o'clock. So it is there, MCQ is there. HTML stands for hypertext markup language. It is actually this started from the concept called XML. From XML, then they extended that to HTML. And HTML initially they made it for the unification of all the document sharing, etc. But later it has become the concepts of the entire web page, and that is how the HTML has grown. HTML is the heart behind any of the browser that is working today. So without HTML, there is no browser today. So that's how the HTML started. We email, now emails are receiving the HTML content inside the body of the email. No longer it's a rich text. It is all now HTML based text. That is what in today's most of the places we are seeing the HTML everywhere. So this is, we have touched upon that. And then we touched upon important tags, HTML overview, basic tags, all this we have touched. So most of them we touched, some of them we don't touch as well. Here there are in tags, the most important thing is there is no end of line. That is what I wanted to just emphasize here. No tags are depending on end of line character, whether you put the tag below or above. It is all depending on one important concept called block and inline. This block and inline is part of display attribute. Style sheet display attribute is the block and inline decision maker. Block means line by line. Inline means everything in the same line. There for div class it is default block. For span class, sorry, div block h tag, it is default block display. If it is a span tag, it is by default it is inline display. So like this h1, h2 up to h6 all are block candidates. So it will make the script to come to the next line. Even if you give the tags in the same line, it will make it to come to the next line. And this is very important thing that we need to understand. Second, there is a every tag we have to close the tag, that is mandatory. Certain tags like input tag we have not seen it as part of this, but we'll see it as part of Angular. That's why I have not taken it there. Input tag, image tag generally doesn't require a end closure end. So it is all taken care by that tag itself. That doesn't require a closure tag. So that is all we have seen in our experiment. None of the events we have seen. We'll see it once we get into the. That is where code behind will be there. Otherwise, I have to show it with alert. Alert is not a big thing to learn. So that will explain this when we come to the Angular. How the events are getting triggered. That will be learning also becomes easier as we go through. Otherwise, explaining the events becomes a difficult because we'll be talking about in air and we may not be using the alerts in a day-to-day scenario. So you may not really can capture what is all about. So we'll talk about, so we have taken this, we'll be taking this as we go, move on. Then these are all different events. We'll take each of these events, keyboard events, mouse events, everything is part and parcel of Angular material we'll take, because there also we predominantly cover UI. UI is nothing but HTML. But the way we present the HTML is slightly different, but all will be same. I will explain that once we start the Angular material. If time permits, I'll try to take the SCSS also. Very, very important CSS format because of programming CSS format. So that I'll take it up when I touch Angular if time permits. So this is the media events, keyboard events, mouse events. All these events we have not touched upon. We will take this all this extensively. We touch this when we move to the Angular material. Then we talked about HTML. This is where we started with. So the doc type is an important candidate on the top. It says what version, what HTML you are using, etc. So always HTML tag starts with HTML and ends with HTML. Closure tag, please note it is a forward slash, and every tag requires a closure, but you can group also. HTML is a grouping candidate, header is a grouping candidate, body is a grouping candidate, style is a grouping candidate, style is also a tag name, right? These are all we have seen as we when we gone through the session. We have seen all this in detail. So p tag is paragraph tag, div tag, br tags, right? Everything self-closing. Br tag is a self-closing tag. Slash, you can see that the way it is a self-closing tag, right? Then block elements. This is very important to understand. The block elements, inline elements. Block elements are nothing but it always goes to the next line by default. Inline elements are always continues on the same line. It is not default goes to the next line. If you want that to go to the next line, you need to specify the class. Div is by default block element. span is by default inline element. So B we have seen, italics we have seen, underline we have seen, embossed we have seen, strong we have seen, subscript, superscript we have seen, all this we have seen, list element we have seen, right? UL element is another one, ordered list, unordered list, there's also we have seen. So please go through the HTML, right click inspect element, go through the default classes that is associated with UL elements, OL elements, all that. So there are other tags which are available, but it is all you need to control it. That is all we have seen it under layout. That is the so HTML attributes. Every tags can have an attributes. The attributes are general attributes are ID. Then it's a name value pair. Any attributes, it's a name value pair. A value can be a simple normal value, string value, or it can be a every attribute is closed with the quotes. It is started with quotes, ended with quotes. Every attribute separated by equal to, name equal to value. So that's how attributes are defined. The attributes, style attribute is the only one which supports JSON format. That means you can give inside the attribute, you can give multiple values that is applicable for the style element, style attribute. Style, we generally call it as element. Style is defined through attributes. And one is style. Then every element you can define all this. ID attribute, style, class. These are all common attributes used across and then events. Events is also part of within the tag only that we are not touched, we'll touch as we go. And all attributes are case sensitive. Attribute names and attributes all the case insensitive, but always system says you please go ahead with lower case. Then CSS we have seen. In that CSS introduction, what is CSS? All this we have gone through. Cascading tile sheet means how it is impacts the entire web design is what it is a learning. It is actually learning. Initially, we may be doing every line item, we may be creating a CSS, we may be creating a tags, etc. But once you initial period, once you cross, then you will understand the power of the CSS and how effectively we need to use the CSS. You will understand that. Especially when you are dealing with fonts, right? Colors, default theme colors, etc. In one place, if you change, you want everywhere that colors to be changed so that the theme is changed across the pages. I don't have to change it in every page. So font, these are all global candidate. Font, different, what are all, first we need to decide in any web page design. Most important thing is how many different fonts you are going to use. That decision has to be taken. Are you going to use 8 also, 10 also, 12 also, 16 also, 14 also, 20 also, 24 also? Then you are not doing a right design. So usually 3 to 4 fonts are used with the there are pages, web pages where they will support to increase the fonts because the aged people, etc. The font is purely depending on the user class whom the page is visible to. Is it younger audience? Is it medium audience? Medium means I'm talking about middle-aged audience, or is it going to be a retired, like aged audience? So to whom these pages are frequently used by, this is the major decision maker for a font. So the font needs to be decided accordingly. Second is how the page will be visited. Is it a mobile based or is it a web desktop based application? How the page will be visited by the people? What type of application it is? Which user community you are going to deal with? All this plays an important role when you decide a font. That is why font is generally a global class. And font, outer margin, how much space you are going to give between one component to other component, right? All this plays a very important role from the uniformity perspective. So for example, button in first page, there are two buttons. Assume that there is a cancel button and save button. You are living between these two buttons. In first page 16 pixel, second page 8 pixel, third page 24 pixel, another page 11 pixel, then it is not the right design. So the right design is spacing of the button has to be uniform across the pages. It cannot be differ. It cannot differ. So these are the global candidate. This CSS, this particular thing is a global candidate. If I want to increase the space, one place you increase, it should automatically give the space everywhere. So that is how the CSS is designed. So first is, what is the header font we need to use? How many headers will be there in our web page? 3 types of header, 2 types of header, how the paragraph has to be defined, how the indentation of paragraph to be designed. All that plays an important role in the CSS. So CSS, initially you can do randomly, you can just do whatever they want, but learn from it. Then professionalism comes in. When it comes to professionalism, CSS plays a very important role. So everybody generally first 2-3 months, it is you are allowed to create in the way you want. Later you yourself will see the product, you refine your product, then you will see that how your product gets improved. In our real Angular class, we are going to take one case study. That is how we are going to develop this entire Angular material from beginning to the end. We'll take one thing, that project. That project will define the requirements initially. Then we'll take that, we'll make that screens, how the screens has to be, etc. We'll take some existing project, or I'll decide on that, but we'll plan in that way, so that you know how the integration happens, how the flow happens. Then we'll refine, make it beautiful. So initially we start with something, then we'll improve and so on. So this will happen once we know the basics of Angular. Angular basics is all about what are all the components involved in Angular, how the components are, what is the purpose of the components. We'll go through that maybe a class or two. Once that is done, then we'll understood, we might be knowing what we are going to do, then we'll take it forward. Okay, so CSS is very, very important candidate that you all have to know about. So what does CSS do? You can, these are all already covered in our previous thing. So I hope you all have that with you. So recursive formatting for each web page saves a lot of time. So benefits of the CSS, right? Select how the CSS is defined. That is also given here. So then examples are given, right? So inline, internal, external. Inline is basically our style attribute. Internal is nothing but style given below the header. External is nothing but you are mapping to the external file, right? This is we have covered underneath. This is what CSS properties are. Some of the properties are listed here. So there are huge. There is no limitation to this. There are huge properties are there under CSS, right? So there are certain things where you can use only CSS to make it effective, like hovering, opacity can be defined directly also, but sometimes you want to, when you mouse over, you want to behave it differently. All that you can do it through CSS. For example, if you mouse over on a button might look like, it just popped out. So all that concepts are part of the CSS. We'll see more on this when we come to Angular material, where we really fit in button, etc. So we'll do that as we go. Exercise also, you might have gone through the CSS. Then we touched upon table structure. Table is another important concept, because this is the base for the entire layout concepts. The entire layout are decided based on the tables, rows and columns, etc. Some are overlapped rows, column span rows, some are row overlap. So that is the one which will give you the look and feel, beautification of that. So in that sense, you need to understand the table. So we have taken exclusively the table with all the details of the table. TR represents rows, TH represents header, TD represents column, right? A table must have a rows and must have a columns. A row within rows, generally columns are defined. A table tag usually by default automatically aligns the columns according to the width of the content and the number of columns it has. So we don't have to do much on this, but you can control it through CSS. You can control your own width also. Nobody stops that. Okay, how to do a collapsing of border, how to go by default, how the tables will look like, all this also we have seen. We have used the style tag effectively here. That is nothing but internal CSS style sheet, right? Some examples we have seen. We have also touched upon row and columns and merging two columns, merging two rows. How to do that, we have seen it with this example. So column group also you can do. Column group is basically used for purpose of one, you want to shade different shade for certain column groups, or you want to uh, scroll only up to certain columns. You don't want to scroll, like all that row filter, column filter, not filter, row masking I can say, or what I can say, row freeze. In Excel sheet, we use the word freeze. So we can freeze the left row, top row, all that group can be used candidates. But in our case, we have seen it with the background images. Very important things, layout elements and techniques. So all these are, there is no definite CSS available for none in any of these tags. Any of the tags, it will work in the way you define it. You have to give proper CSS across, and all these tags are common candidate across all your pages. If I define a section, the section will look like this. If I define a header, the header will look like this. It may have some border behind. That is why these are all some of the layout elements default available, but no CSS specified. You can define the CSS in the way you want and make it permanent, because it becomes permanent across the pages. Okay. So then these are all the techniques to make the layout effective. Grid layout, flexbox, float layout, and other CSS frameworks. We can use any of those. Bootstrap is one of the framework commonly available. So Bootstrap is a framework which will be, most of them are using Bootstrap framework, FX layout framework. Most of them are using this kind of a framework across the things. So Bootstrap is used by most of the things like React.js. People uses Bootstrap framework. These are all community developed CSS framework. It has a good documentation and commonly accepted header size, a space between the header and the next row. All that are commonly accepted by a community. Mobile means how it should look like, etc. Grid layout, this also we have seen. So how to define an item, how to define a container, everything is depending on your CSS. Okay. Then we moved on to JavaScript. So this is where we move to the code editor, where we learned several things under JavaScript. Let me open the Visual Studio Code. started with JavaScript 1. We initially what we need in a programming is basically assigning variables. Don't think it is something different. It is all, sometimes the mind becomes a bottleneck for our learning. So we please just understand uh, anything and everything can be learned. That confidence has to be there. Some of the things you will learn it by seeing it because we are new to that. So help is always available. None of the things in today's world is complex because help is available. And that help is also instantaneously available. I don't have to go through the books or anything. I don't have to buy any books in today's world. So what we need to do is, first is you will have an initial resistance to learn any new things because that is our human tendency. Path of least resistance is your psychology. Psychology says human tendency is path of least resistance. So you need to use willpower to learn. That willpower should say that, yes, I can learn. That confidence has to come. 1 or 2 months if you struggle, because all new things, it is like a child while it starts walking, it falls several times, but it doesn't stop there. It falls, it laughs, and then it will just move on. Sometimes it cries, then it will again move on. Same attitude we need to have. We will fall. We should not expect that I will not fall. You have to fall. When you fall only you will understand the pain of that fall. Then only the learning becomes hard. Impact. Basics has to be very strong. If basics are not strong, you will every time you will expect a Google to help you. So basics has to be strong. For that, only practice makes that basic strong. Any number of learning, any number of you hear with your videos or anything, you cannot learn it in the way you learn it by writing on your own, failing on that, learning from that mistake. You never learn the best without this, right? Maybe you may go through this video material, all these are fine, but finally you have to ride the bicycle by sitting on that bicycle and ride. Google or books cannot teach you bicycle riding. You will have to sit, you have to pedal it, then only you will learn how to balance the bicycle. It is equivalent to that. You cannot learn it from books or anything. So all this, we are just giving you some heads up. There may be a difference because we understood that you know it is all this. You may think that we are going fast, but everywhere there is a pressure of time, at the same time coverage. We come under that justification of all those. Whatever you learn, it is not sufficient in today's technology, the way the technology is moving on, moving ahead. None of these are sufficient. We have to learn some new things as we go. So basics, we learned about what is variables, etc. In today's predominant constant, JSON is the ultimate candidate today. JSON is used by most of the people. Most of the transactions happens through JSON as a backend carrier. Carrier means data transporter. Data transportation happens through the JSON, and JSON is accepted as a universal standard today. Because of its flexibility to have any structure into that. It doesn't limit yourself. It doesn't limit anybody. At the same time, you can manage many of the structure within the JSON. So that also we have seen it in one of the class as well. So day one, we started with this. We initialize numbers, strings, arrays, right? How to increment a number, decrement a number. Decrement is nothing but minus. Plus plus is an increase by 1. Assigning is equal to. Equal to is always assigning. Validation double equal to. If I want to compare, it is double equal to. Assignment is single equal to. In JavaScript, on most of the languages, it is standard. Assignment is single equal to. Comparison or validations are double equals. Plus equals, it increments by 100. Equal to plus also it does. First is assigns, then increments. That is what plus equal to means. Equal to plus means it assigns first, then increments the value. Equal to plus means, sorry, plus equal to means first it increments, then assigns the value. That is the difference. This can be experimented with functions. Within a function, you pass a parameter which is having a plus equal to, and then you pass a parameter which is having a normal equal to plus. Right? Then you will understand that better. So assignments, all this we have seen. And most used component like concatenation. This is very, very important because we do this string operation major in any of the programming language. I may have to take the month of month from the date of birth. I may have to take it from the sequence of events. I may have to take the file name alone. All that is possible in string operations, concatenate operation, split operation, and replace operation plays a very important role. Substring also plays a very important role. Substring operation. I want to take the data from nth position to some 10 characters. I want to retrieve the data from. All this plays an important role in different programming uh, requirements. Decides that. So we have seen concat, we have seen split, we have seen how the split works, and we have also seen looping statement, for loop, while loop. We have seen while loop always goes with the condition, for loop goes with an incremental candidate and condition. Without a condition, while loop, the most important thing that you all to understand is while loop, you should not go to infinite loop. You need to ensure that it is properly addressed. These are all memory leakage candidates. Memory as well, CPU as well. Very much depending on all this loop are very important from the perspective of where we are using it, when to use this. How big is the loop? That also you have to be very careful, because in Node.js we always talk about asynchronous operation. We have not touched upon main thread, child thread and all. Once we touch that, you will understand more about this, but just a heads up for you to keep a watch on this. While make sure the condition is valid, make sure the condition is always met. If condition is not met, it becomes infinite loop. Infinite loop reaches maximum CPU. So this is what we have seen in the initial classes. Then we have gone with substring, that is splitting of array, going through the for loop, and functions also we created. So switch statement also we have seen here. If condition and switch statements are general conditional statements used. The syntax of it, make sure you are aware of, because there are mistakes we have done on this area. Then array, map string. So map is equivalent to for loop, but the way it works is different. The speed, there is no much difference between a for loop speed or a map. It is all almost same. For each, I cannot say map is now equivalent to for. Map is not equivalent to for. For each, it is equivalent to for each. So because map is an asynchronous operator, for is a synchronous operator. So this also we have seen. Then we have seen it on how to do the arrays and how to make the unique array set operator, how to make it as an unique array, and all these combinations we have seen in the subsequent class. Then we moved on to map operator, that is new map. The new map, the key has to be unique, and here we talked about the speed at which the map retrieves the data compared to JSON, simple JSON as well. So the simple JSON also, this is a class where we touched upon simple JSON key value. This key value we expanded to multiple nested JSON. This is called nested JSON. This is a simple JSON key value pair. This is the nested JSON. This also we have seen in our class. Then map. Map we have seen, and map is a purely a dictionary object. In real term dictionary object, the value has to be a string, but here we can use the string. You can give any data type as a value. Map can be anything. Map, that is the key, can be string or it can be a number. Both are allowed. So this also we have seen it under JSON. We have also seen the JSON method. Parse is the one of the JSON operator available. Stringified JSON, if you want to convert, you can use JSON parse. JSON parse expects certain syntax. Without that syntax, JSON parse will fail. I hope you might have seen it on the class exercise, how to fail a JSON parse. If not, you need to learn on that as well. Okay, then we came into the most important topic called, we continued on file system object the next day. We continued on spread operator and we continued with the unique values. So these two we have seen there. So this is a spread operator of joining. Here in this topic, most important thing that we learned is referenced variable and static variable. So A, B, C is a referenced variable. When C changes, A also changes. When right now we are pushing element to C. When C changes, we have that A also changes over there. This we have seen here. So B element, we pushed it inside A. So inside C, since it is C is referenced as A, we have noticed that the A is also changed. If you are not able to understand this, practice this well. Very, very important candidate, so that you understand this reference concept when it comes to managing the data in the real world. How it affects, you will come to know once we get into Angular material, showing the grid content, using the pagination, when you are appending the content to the base file, how the data changes, you will understand that when it comes to that area. Then set operator, how to unify the data. Set operator is used. So operator can work on objects or array elements. It can work on that. So this also we have noticed that. Then we have seen some of the array index of all this filter, all these are there. So you have to explore through various operations possible with arrays. Arrays is a very important candidate in our day-to-day programming language. That's a very important candidate. It is basically nested array, sorry, not nested array, nested JSON inside an array. That means multiple JSON within an array. That kind of a concept is what mostly we will be using. And then how to do a stringify and JSON, all this we have seen. So these are all we have seen it as a subsequent class. Later we moved on to the file system object. Very, very important topic for log writing, for anything you want to read it from the file, write to the file, everything is very critical in our programming application. You might have heard about access log. So how much time a request has taken to complete the job. All this are generally we call it as access log. Access logs are every method that you write in your code, so that you need to know the performance of that particular method, or the end, how the end user will see the performance from that perspective. So the access log is generally used from that context. So access logs are generally, we use all these file system objects to create a log. Everything and anything cannot be stored onto the DB. So we need somewhere, we need to use the file system itself as a storage device. The logs are some of the candidates towards that. Log analytics is a separate subject that we'll talk about. So in that we started with how to check the directory, how to make a directory. In case if directory is a child, it has a child directory, nested directory, then how to recursively create that. We have seen both pros and no, both side, with recursive, without recursive, both we have seen. And any of these file system objects or JSON elements, your operations, you need to use a try catch. This also we have learned in this context. We have learned how to use the try catch, because that is very, very critical for us. So this area, check directory, create directory, stat of the file, right? Content of the directory, I think I have missed out on this. You can try it out. So that means entire directory content you can read and then go through a loop as well. Create stream, it returns an array of names in the directory, inside the directory. Read stream we have seen, write stream we have seen. File read, direct file read also we have seen. It reads the entire content, that also we have seen. File write, entire file writing also we have seen. This is without streaming, but streaming is the one which is used effectively everywhere. Last but not least, data objects we have seen. The importance of the data object comes from the way the data is stored onto the database and how we retrieve the data from the database. So date operation has several. I have a date field. I want to group it on year. I want to group it on month. I want to see the month-wise performance across all the years. I want to see month-wise performance every year, right? All these combinations of value things are possible when you have a proper date structure implemented in the system. So this is a very important candidate from the perspective of storage and date operations. Date operations are simpler when you deal with directly the date object. If you don't deal with directly the date objects, we'll always have a problem of whether February is having 29 or 28. So whether 30 or 31 in the month end. So if I add 30 days, what will happen to the, it should not show 30th February, right? All that validation gets erased when you have a proper formatting in picture. So very important candidate. There are lot of things depending on this date. So ISO being considered as a ISO string is considered as a uniform standard across. Whenever we transfer the data from one place to another place, we convert it through ISO string so that the end user sees as per that time. So and always any front end language that we use like Angular or anybody, they'll always show the date field in their local timestamp. You will not see the time field in another's timestamp. It always will be for your local timestamp. That's how Angular shows the data in your system. We have seen multiple operations of the date, and we have created a function for add dates as well. All this we have seen. We have seen how it adds, when it adds 370, how it gets added. We have added 100 days, how it has got added. When we add 10 days, how it has got added. We have seen all this combination as well. So these are all what we have seen in all these 2 weeks of the class. These 3 days, next 3 days, tomorrow and day after tomorrow and today, it is very critical for you to, you are have to be very comfortable to whatever we have learned. We will be repeating in a different level in the subsequent days. At that time, more focus will be not on the basic things, it will be more on higher levels of learning. So any questions as of now, please let me know so that if possible, I can answer. 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. is the MCQ test that is being broadcasted. Please make sure you attend those. Very important that you go through all these MCQs. JIT link already shared. All these notes are, everything is available in the JIT already. Some are I have already shared it as part of the question and answer. session. From everything almost move to the GitHub also. Okay. So since there is no more questions, we will we'll wait for Angular. So very important, please go through some Angular. Try to keep it intact in your system, because in my system already I have an Angular, so I will not deploy it again. It is a first is you need to install Node. Before you Angular, you need to install Node in your machine. Once you install the Node, go through npm command to install the Angular. That links and all I shared it before, so I hope you all have it. Please make sure that that is done. From Monday onwards, we'll be getting into more of development subjects. Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I leave it at this point. Thank you. Bye. Priyambika or Abhirami, you can take over.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye. Recording can be stopped.